She told the court he did it. But 10 years later, her private journal exposed everything. This isn't just a lie, it's the perfect betrayal. For Fernando Jimenez, life revolved around the predictable rhythm of numbers and financial statements. As the head of the accounting department at Pinnacle Financial Services, his career was established, his routine defined. That stability shattered when staggering accusations emerged. Over an 18-month period, the company had been defrauded of more than $2.3 million through embezzlement, and the investigation concluded that all trails led directly to him. The subsequent trial painted a damning picture. Prosecutors presented a seemingly airtight case built upon suspicious bank transfers, altered company records, and critical documents apparently bearing Fernando's unmistakable signature. The narrative appeared simple, a trusted executive exploiting his position for personal gain. Any lingering doubt seemed to evaporate with the testimony delivered by the person closest to him, his wife of 7 years, Hade Sabala. With a firm voice and determined gaze, she recounted discovering incriminating evidence within their home, detailing suspicious behaviors and conversations that strongly suggested her husband's guilt. Her words carried immense weight, proving pivotal in the eyes of the jury. Yet, beneath the surface of the seemingly straightforward case, troubling questions lingered, questions the defense raised but which failed to sway the verdict amidst the compelling circumstantial evidence. How had Fernando, a man acknowledged to possess no advanced computer skills, managed to bypass sophisticated corporate security systems to execute the complex fraud? Why did subtle, unexplained irregularities appear in the handwriting on some key documents? And if he had successfully embezzled millions, why did his lifestyle remain conspicuously modest, unchanged down to the same car he had driven for the past 5 years? These inconsistencies were ultimately overshadowed. The jury returned a guilty verdict, and Fernando Jimenez was handed a sentence that would irrevocably alter his life, 10 years in prison. As court officers led him away, he maintained his position, stating firmly, "I am innocent. One day the truth will come out." It was a declaration often made, yet few in the courtroom could have anticipated the complex, hidden truths behind the facade of this solved case, or foreseen that his adamant claim marked the true beginning of an arduous, decade-long battle for vindication set to unfold within the stark reality of prison. Few present that day could grasp the profound resonance those words would eventually hold. While the verdict seemed final, Fernando's journey was far from over. His adamant claim of innocence marked not an end, but the beginning of an extraordinary, decade-long struggle for vindication that would commence within the stark confines of prison walls. The transition into the Arizona State Penitentiary system was jarring, a brutal immersion into a world utterly alien to Fernando Jimenez. The structured, predictable environment of corporate finance, with its spreadsheets and boardroom meetings, was replaced by the harsh, often chaotic reality of incarceration. Facilities like the Lewis Prison Complex operated on rigid routines and constant surveillance, an austere setting that felt almost incomprehensible to a man whose life had been spent navigating numbers, not cell blocks. The initial months were a disorienting blend of hopelessness and disbelief, compounded by the psychological weight of maintaining innocence while surrounded by the machinery of the justice system that had declared him guilty. Yet, it was precisely within this hostile environment that the first crucial pieces of the puzzle challenging his conviction began to emerge. In late 2009, during shifts working in the prison library, Fernando encountered Ethan Harris. Harris, a former programmer serving a 3-year sentence for computer hacking, possessed an intimate knowledge of computer systems and digital security. Intrigued by the technical nature of the financial fraud case that had landed Fernando behind bars, Harris became interested. Fernando managed to share copies of the financial records that had formed the bedrock of the prosecution's case, the very documents supposedly proving his guilt. Harris applied his expertise, meticulously reviewing the digital evidence. What he uncovered marked a significant turning point. He identified subtle but critical anomalies that had escaped the notice of the original investigators. Specifically, the digital transactions used to incriminate Fernando exhibited irregularities in their metadata, the underlying data detailing file properties like creation and modification dates, and inconsistencies in timestamps. These were not minor discrepancies, they strongly suggested that the records had been subjected to later manipulation, altered after the fact by someone with significant technical skill. As Harris noted in observations Fernando guarded closely, these records have been altered by someone with advanced knowledge. The modifications are sophisticated, but they leave digital trails. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for and how to make it look like someone else's work. This inmate collaboration provided the first concrete, technical validation of Fernando's deeply held belief that the evidence against him was fabricated. While Fernando grappled with these revelations inside prison, life on the outside continued its course, bringing developments that further fueled his unease. Just 3 months after his sentencing, Sabala initiated divorce proceedings, citing the irreparable betrayal of trust as the primary reason. By 2010, she had swiftly reverted to her maiden name and embarked on a new chapter. Strikingly, this new chapter included a significant professional advancement. Sabala secured an executive position at Pinnacle Financial, the very company Fernando was convicted of defrauding. Adding another layer to Fernando's growing suspicion, her rise occurred under the direction of Ryan Brooks, his own former colleague at the firm. This confluence of events, the rapid divorce, Sabala's damning trial testimony, and her subsequent professional success intertwined with Ryan Brooks at Pinnacle Financial, began solidifying a disturbing pattern in Fernando's mind, suggesting a connection that might run deeper than mere professional association. With technical questions casting shadows on the digital evidence and disturbing coincidences clouding the narrative outside, Fernando recognized the limits of what he could achieve from within the system. His suspicions about Sabala and Ryan needed investigation beyond prison walls, prompting him to seek professional help to unearth the truth he felt certain lay hidden. With technical questions casting shadows on the digital evidence and disturbing coincidences clouding the narrative outside, Fernando recognized the limits of what he could achieve from within the system. His suspicions about Sabala and Ryan needed investigation beyond prison walls, prompting him to seek professional help to unearth the truth he felt certain lay hidden. In 2011, acting on a recommendation from his new legal counsel, Fernando made the crucial decision to hire Samuel Young, a private investigator. Young, a former police officer, brought a reputation for meticulousness and unwavering perseverance to the table, qualities desperately needed for a case layered with complexity and obscured by time. Taking on the case despite initial skepticism, Young embarked on the painstaking process of digging into the lives and connections of Sabala and Ryan Brooks. The investigation moved slowly, encountering the inevitable obstacles and resistance that arise when scrutinizing individuals who have successfully navigated professional spheres. Yet, Young's methodical approach gradually began to yield results, uncovering information that lent credence to Fernando's deeply held suspicions. One of the first significant findings was photographic evidence dating back to 2007. These images captured Sabala and Ryan together in situations suggesting a personal closeness that transcended a typical professional relationship. Critically, these photos predated the official discovery of the fraud at Pinnacle Financial by several months, raising questions about the timeline of their association. This evidence trail was further solidified by phone records, which indicated frequent communications between the pair, often occurring at unusual hours, inconsistent with purely work-related interactions. More alarming, however, was the financial evidence trail Young started to uncover. His investigation identified bank transfers originating from an offshore account linked directly to Ryan Brooks. While offshore accounts themselves are not illegal, the destination of these funds raised serious red flags. The money trail led to an account held in the name of Sabala's sister. This discovery pointed towards a potential financial entanglement and motive, connecting Ryan's finances, however indirectly, to Sabala's family network during a period relevant to the case against Fernando. By 2013, armed with the evidence of the personal relationship and the suspicious financial links, Fernando and his lawyer felt they had compiled enough compelling information to formally request a judicial review of his conviction. However, their hopes were dashed. The request was officially rejected, the reason cited being a lack of sufficiently conclusive evidence to warrant overturning the original verdict. This legal setback was devastating, a formal declaration that the evidence painstakingly gathered wasn't enough to pierce the armor of the conviction. Yet, for Fernando Jimenez, this rejection did not extinguish hope. Instead, it fueled an even stronger resolve. Faced with the limitations of external investigation, he turned inward, intensifying his efforts within the confines of his prison cell. He began to rigorously study criminal law and immerse himself in the intricacies of digital forensics, transforming his incarceration into an opportunity for self-education. His cell became a makeshift investigation hub, a testament to his unwavering determination to understand the mechanisms that led to his wrongful conviction and to fight back with knowledge. Meanwhile, as Fernando dedicated himself to legal texts and forensic principles behind bars, life for Hade Sabala and Ryan Burks continued its upward trajectory. Their professional careers thrived, and in 2014, they publicly solidified their personal relationship, officially announcing their engagement during Pinnacle Financial's prestigious annual gala. The event, widely covered by local press, featured photographs of the beaming couple celebrating their joint success, a life built on foundations that, unknown to the wider world, were beginning to crack under scrutiny. While Hade Sabala and Ryan toasted their success under the public gaze, seemingly untouchable, the painstaking investigation continued quietly. The threads Young had begun to pull, combined with Fernando's relentless self-education, were slowly tightening. The next significant break in the case wouldn't come from piecing together past relationships or financial links alone, but from deep within the digital infrastructure of Pinnacle Financial itself, promising to expose the mechanics of the deception. While Hade Sabala and Ryan toasted their success under the public gaze, seemingly untouchable, the painstaking investigation continued quietly. The threads Young had begun to pull, combined with Fernando's relentless self-education, were slowly tightening. The next significant break in the case wouldn't come from piecing together past relationships or financial links alone, but from deep within the digital infrastructure of Pinnacle Financial itself, promising to expose the mechanics of the deception. That break arrived unexpectedly in the spring of 2016. Samuel Young received contact from Michael Richardson, a former IT security specialist who had worked at Pinnacle Financial during the critical period when the fraud occurred. Richardson possessed something extraordinary, personal backup copies of system access logs from that time. He had preserved these logs because of irregularities he had noticed, concerns his superiors had instructed him to ignore. Presented to Young in a meticulously organized folder, these logs contained information that would dramatically alter the investigation's trajectory. They revealed unusual activity on the company's financial servers, specifically logins using Fernando Jimenez's credentials. Crucially, these logins originated from IP addresses linked to computer terminals other than Fernando's usual workstation, and many occurred overnight or at times when company records documented Fernando as being verifiably elsewhere, attending meetings or even out of town. This was tangible data contradicting the foundational assertion that Fernando alone had the access and opportunity. Armed with Richardson's logs, Young expanded the investigation into the complex digital environment of the fraud. He discreetly enlisted the expertise of Zachary Perry, a digital forensics specialist adept in corporate fraud cases. Perry's analysis first validated the authenticity and significance of Richardson's logs. Then, digging deeper, he uncovered the mechanism behind the unauthorized access. Fernando's logging credentials had been compromised months before the fraud was discovered, captured by a sophisticated keylogger installed on his computer. Furthermore, Perry found compelling technical evidence that someone possessing administrative privileges within Pinnacle Financial had created a hidden backdoor into the financial system. This covert access point was critical, as it allowed the perpetrator to modify financial records without leaving the standard traces in the main audit logs, the very logs likely reviewed and cleared by the original investigators. It explained how the manipulations could have occurred seemingly undetected. As the technical evidence painted a picture of how Fernando could have been framed, another crucial witness emerged to shed light on the who and why. Young tracked down Kristen Ward, who had served as Ryan Burks' executive assistant before leaving Pinnacle Financial in 2015 following a labor dispute. Importantly, Ward had retained copies of correspondence from her time at the company. Among these documents were emails exchanged between Ryan Burks and Hade Sabala dating back to 2007, a full year before the fraud came to light. These emails not only suggested an established intimate relationship but contained explicit discussions about needing to resolve Fernando's issue and made cryptic references to the necessity of creating new documentation. The most explosive finding within Ward's cache was a draft email composed by Ryan Brooks himself. This draft meticulously outlined the steps required to access Pinnacle's financial systems using Fernando's compromised credentials, providing specific instructions on how to alter transactional records and manufacture false digital trails designed to inevitably implicate Fernando. It was undeniable evidence of a premeditated conspiracy. The digital forensics cracked open the technical methods of the frame-up, while the preserved emails exposed the calculated human intent behind it. With proof of compromised credentials, hidden access points, and documented premeditation stretching back years, Samuel Young now held the keys to potentially unlock Fernando Jimenez's prison cell. The next step was to formally present this damning mosaic of evidence to the justice system. The digital forensics cracked open the technical methods of the frame-up, while the preserved emails exposed the calculated human intent behind it. With proof of compromised credentials, hidden access points, and documented premeditation stretching back years, Samuel Young now held the keys to potentially unlock Fernando Jimenez's prison cell. The next step was to formally present this damning mosaic of evidence to the justice system. In November 2017, Samuel Young submitted his exhaustive findings to Fernando's attorney. The comprehensive report, spanning over 300 pages and packed with technical analyses, financial exhibits, and witness statements, built an undeniable case. Fernando Jimenez appeared to be the victim of an elaborate, long-running conspiracy orchestrated by his wife and his former colleague. Armed with this dossier, Fernando's legal team filed a formal petition to reopen the case. Unlike previous attempts that had been dismissed for lack of conclusiveness, this petition carried the weight of substantial, corroborated evidence across multiple fronts: technical, financial, and testimonial. The difference was palpable. The evidence was now too compelling to ignore. Recognizing this, a Maricopa County Superior Court judge granted the petition in December 2017, ordering a full review of the case and compelling the prosecution to formally respond to the new allegations within 90 days. News of the possible reopening reached Fernando Jimenez in prison nearly 10 years after his initial incarceration began. A decade behind bars had left its mark. He was thinner, his hair prematurely grayed. But the passage of time had not dimmed the unwavering determination in his eyes. His eventual prison release marked not just a restoration of freedom, but the beginning of a new, complex phase in his fight for justice. Re-entering a world that had significantly advanced, where people he once knew had moved on with their lives, presented its own challenges. Rather than seeking immediate, public confrontation, Fernando adopted a remarkably calculated and patient strategy. Taking up discreet residence in a modest Tempe apartment, funded by savings his sister had carefully managed during his imprisonment, he focused his energy methodically. He began collaborating closely with the prosecution and federal authorities, who were now reinvestigating the original fraud case from a fresh perspective. Fernando spent countless hours in detailed meetings, leveraging his intimate knowledge of Pinnacle financial systems to explain technical aspects and pinpoint specific flaws in the evidence originally used against him. Simultaneously, he continued to work with Samuel Young, whose own investigation broadened, identifying additional former Pinnacle employees who, emboldened by the new developments, began cooperating. A central, ingenious component of Fernando's strategic planning involved creating a new professional identity. He became Francisco Varela, purportedly a financial consultant recently arrived from California. This fictitious persona, complete with dyed hair, discreet glasses, and a meticulously crafted backstory, was not born from a desire for personal revenge but served a crucial tactical purpose. It allowed him to circulate within Arizona's financial circles, particularly those connected to Pinnacle Financial, without raising immediate suspicion. As Francisco Varela, he began attending networking events by May 2018, carefully observing Hade Sabala and Ryan Brooks from a distance. He noted telling details. Ryan showed obvious signs of stress, frequently checking his phone and engaging in tense, private conversations. Hade Sabala projected a confidence that seemed rehearsed, her body language suggesting constant vigilance. Utilizing contacts cultivated through his alias, Fernando accessed information about the couple's recent corporate activities. He discovered they were accelerating the transfer of assets into newly formed business structures, primarily in states like Nevada and Delaware known for their opaque corporate laws. This behavior strongly suggested they were preparing for potential legal fallout or even flight, feeling the investigative pressure mounting. Fernando's undercover observations confirmed his targets were feeling the heat, their frantic financial maneuvers hinting at preparations for the worst. What he didn't yet fully grasp was the extent of their ongoing activities. The next revelation, however, would expose a far deeper layer of deception, confirming that the original fraud was just the beginning of their illicit enterprise. Fernando's undercover observations confirmed his targets were feeling the heat, their frantic financial maneuvers hinting at preparations for the worst. What he didn't yet fully grasp was the extent of their ongoing activities. The next revelation, however, would expose a far deeper layer of deception, confirming that the original fraud was just the beginning of their illicit enterprise. In July 2018, the final piece of the puzzle arrived via Timothy Bennett, a financial analyst working directly under Ryan Burks at Pinnacle Financial. Bennett contacted Samuel Young with explosive information. He had uncovered documented proof that Ryan and Hade Sabala were orchestrating a separate, ongoing fraud scheme. This wasn't merely related to Fernando's case. They had continued to siphon millions more from the company in the years after Fernando's conviction, employing increasingly sophisticated methods similar to those used to frame him. Bennett provided copies of suspicious transactions, incriminating encrypted emails, and crucial access logs for secure servers that substantiated his claims of continued, large-scale fraud. The evidence was so compelling that federal authorities swiftly launched a parallel investigation, focusing specifically on potential international money laundering activities linked to the couple. As the official investigations intensified in late August, Fernando deployed the final element of his strategic plan. Through his carefully constructed network of informants and contacts, he orchestrated a steady stream of calculated disinformation directed at Ryan and Hade Sabala, subtly suggesting that authorities were pursuing incorrect leads or lacked sufficient proof. The objective was tactical: create a false sense of security, hoping the mounting pressure would lead them into making critical errors. Feeling the net closing in despite the disinformation, Ryan and Hade Sabala initiated a desperate contingency plan. After weeks of clandestine preparations, they attempted their escape in the pre-dawn hours of September 15, 2018. Their plan involved fleeing the country using plane tickets booked under false identities, carrying meticulously forged documentation, and having already actioned final wire transfers of their illicit funds to inaccessible accounts in non-extradition jurisdictions. They were unaware, however, that their every move was anticipated. Federal authorities, working closely with Fernando Jimenez and his team, had established a comprehensive surveillance network. When Ryan and Hade Sabala arrived at Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport at 4:30 a.m., a discreet team of FBI agents was already in position. The arrest occurred swiftly and without incident as the pair attempted to pass through security screening with the forged passports. A search of their luggage revealed encrypted electronic devices, further financial documentation, and over $250,000 in cash. Subsequent investigation exposed the full scope of their planning. A search of their Scottsdale mansion uncovered a hidden room concealed behind a false library panel. Inside, agents found documents detailing the original fraud against Fernando, evidence of their subsequent financial manipulations, and, most critically, an online journal meticulously maintained by Hade Sabala. Protected by multiple layers of encryption that took FBI technicians days to crack, this journal contained explicit confessions, documenting every stage of the decade-long deception. The trial of Ryan Burks and Hade Sabala began in February 2019, commanding significant media attention. The prosecution presented a methodical, evidence-rich case, exposing not only the original fraud that wrongfully imprisoned Fernando but also the subsequent years of complex financial manipulations that had generated illicit profits exceeding $15 million. Digital evidence, testimony from former employees like Bennett and Ward, and forensic financial analysis painted an undeniable picture of premeditation and systematic deceit. A particularly shocking revelation during the trial was that recovered emails indicated the couple's conspiracy to target Fernando as a scapegoat had begun even before their personal relationship solidified. Fernando Jimenez himself testified, maintaining remarkable composure as he delivered a factual, detailed account devastatingly effective for the prosecution. On May 17, 2019, after only 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict, guilty on all counts for both Ryan Brooks and Haight Sabala, including financial fraud, tampering with evidence, perjury, and obstruction of justice. The gavel fell, definitively convicting Ryan Brooks and Haight Sabala and marking the end of their elaborate web of deceit. The verdict brought not only legal closure but also vindication for Fernando Jimenez after a decade lost. Beyond the courtroom drama, however, the case resonated with broader implications about justice, truth, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The gavel fell, definitively convicting Ryan Brooks and Haight Sabala and marking the end of their elaborate web of deceit. The verdict brought not only legal closure but also vindication for Fernando Jimenez after a decade lost. Beyond the courtroom drama, however, the case resonated with broader implications about justice, truth, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Justice, in this instance, proved agonizingly slow and its path tortuous, yet ultimately, it prevailed. In the aftermath, Fernando Jimenez himself spoke not of satisfied revenge or lingering bitterness over the years stolen from him. Instead, his reflections focused on the hard-won wisdom forged in the crucible of injustice. He described learning the profound value of strategic patience, understanding that sometimes the most effective path requires methodical planning rather than immediate reaction. He emphasized the importance of maintaining faith and perseverance, even when facing seemingly insurmountable adversity and the darkness of prolonged incarceration. His ordeal taught him how, even in the bleakest circumstances, the relentless pursuit of truth can eventually lead towards the light. The ripple effects of the Fernando Jimenez case extended beyond the personal vindication. It left a significant imprint on the Arizona judicial